Hello, I'm Rick Becker. This is a Beck News Special Report. Today we are talking with Kevin Jenkins, CEO of America's Frontline Doctors. America's Frontline Doctors, the organization that we came to know during COVID, when the medical establishment was pushing down our throats, the political narrative, an organization came up as almost a grassroots effort. And this is an organization we relied on as a voice in the wilderness, if you will. And since that time, concerns have arisen, serious concerns. So we have Mr. Jenkins with us today to discuss America's Frontline Doctors, what has been happening, where is it going, what can we expect? Mr. Jenkins, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about Frontline Doctors and yourself as well.
Well, myself, I'm Kevin Jenkins, obviously, the CEO of America's Frontline Doctors. I think over the last several years, I've learned to understand that it is critically important that as an institutional leader, we put forth the best face. I grew up in the city of Newark, New Jersey. I come from a really wonderful family, politics and housing development and all, and I figured out over the years that the only thing that we can do to help the underserved is stand up for them every day. So in my family life and my business life, it's always been a concern of ours that we maintain our moral compass, that we stay singular focused on helping people around the country. And I think that at America's Frontline Doctors right now, even though they're trying times, I think there's great opportunity there to move us out of sick care to well care, to really educate the rest of America about how to take back their real body sovereignty by claiming their health and owning their health. How do we come together as the medical industry, or how do we come together as doctors and laymen to really build a bridge to a better, healthy America? There's a lot of great institutions out there I would like to mention later that are doing that work. And I think America's Frontline Doctors still has a future. And if we don't get past this dark period, and I think a lot of organizations go through that, I think it would be a shame, because America needs us. We need them. We need to be listening to them. We need to be developing strategic plans to move us out of sick care to well care. We need to build a better bridge to make America healthy. Really break that bondage that we've been involved in with the medical industry, big pharma, and really bring some truth to the discussion. And it's really sad that we have to really spend this kind of time kind of breaking down why this organization is going through these growing pains. And I kind of talked to you earlier today. I said, this is kind of Shakespearean. This is a Shakespearean tragedy. And when I first got involved in this, I was asked by Joey Gilbert and the board members of the American Frontline Doctors, the former board members, to come in and put a committee together, an oversight committee together, to right the ship. And I think we did a great job. I think America knew after we did that, the board had stepped down, a new board had came on. And then what we started seeing, that there was some sort of confusion about what direction we wanted to go into with some of the old and new board members. And I think we righted the ship. We have some really wonderful people working at America's Frontline Doctors right now. True heroes that stood in there and said, listen, we have to fight to save this organization. Because remember, it was not about one individual. It was about a group of doctors in this country saying, we don't agree with what's going on in this country around healthcare, and we're going to go and stand on the Capitol, stand together to fight against the tyranny of their time. Yeah. So I'm really proud to say that it's worth fighting for. I'm proud to say that I think we're going to win the day for the people in this country. I think the small donors that gave their money over the last couple of years want us to survive. I think there's some confusion out there about who the leadership is and what we're committed to. I think that this is a great opportunity to tell the truth to America. I think that right now, if we can stand on our moral compass and stand on the truth, I think people will start to trust the organization again. And when they asked me to come on as CEO, they said, because you were working so hard on the subcommittee level, maybe you can help us to right the ship. And that's where I got involved.
Now, you've discussed or put out 3 points, essentially, which is transparency, accountability, and focus. Focus, I think, meaning future focus.
Absolutely.
So I want to go to the transparency, because many viewers are aware of of America's Frontline Doctors as the white coat summit people, the heroes that stood up against the massive onslaught of this government pressure for doctors to comply with all of the crazy things with COVID. And many are not aware that you have been and maybe continue to go through turmoil, or hopefully coming out of it. There have been a lot of personalities associated with America's Frontline Doctors, but I do think our viewers are not perhaps aware of what's been happening. Can you give some of the highlights?
Well, right now we're in the fight for the soul of the institution that we call America's Frontline Doctors. The former, I would say, CEO and founder, with other doctors, she was not the only founder, has now engaged in fraud. There's about $30 million that we cannot locate. She's still moving around the country, giving people the impression that she is still the leader of the American Frontline Doctors after the courts in Arizona said that she's not on the board, that she had resigned from the board. She's now still using our website, still using our email, still using our trademark to go out and raise money for what I don't know. She's gone out around the country saying that she's innocent when in fact it's not about innocence. It's about doing the right thing and stepping away so the organization can evolve. As of today, she's throwing defamation lawsuits around as if it's chocolate, for someone attempting to say we're defaming her when in fact she's been committing fraud from day one. From the Arizona case, when they said that she was not on the board, she still has our trademark, she still has our emails, she's still raising money, and she's still giving money to organizations as if she's the leader. So now they're engaged in fraud. I don't even think they're aware of what's happening right now. So transparency is, from the report that we submitted to all of the stuff that we've been showing the country, I think is important that we tell the truth.
Right. I think what's so unfortunate about this is we have an organization that I think really represented a voice for the people. And then you have personalities involved. And I think of BLM, for example.
Yes.
Right. Patrice Cullors. And being indicted on charges in real estate and missing funds and so forth. And you think, okay, perhaps, well, that's a different organization. This one I'm behind, and then so disappointing. I mean, we get it from our politicians, the corruptness, the greed, and then from what I keep calling a grassroots organization, because it represents where the grassroots were, to have this happen again is, I think, just so disheartening. And so Dr. Gold, you've indicated, is perhaps responsible for missing funds.
Yeah.
And so with the transparency, you have also accountability as one of your three areas. Has she been charged? Has she been indicted? Have papers been filed as far as complaints?
Well, we're working on that, but what we tried to do earlier on was not only right the ship, but really start to focus on solutions. And every time we get ready to focus on solutions, we can't get our trademark back, we can't get our emails back. She's still giving the banks across the country, writing letters with her lawyers saying that she's the rightful, soulful owner of the institution as if it's a corporation. So she's kind of put the institution in a bad space where we have to spend the money that we do have on legal action as opposed to pro action that's going to help people to move out of sick care to well care. So it is a Shakespearean tragedy. And she would probably come here to say that she's innocent. It's not about being innocent. It's about you telling the truth. And what we tried to do was hold back from pressing charges against her, but she's leaving us she's leaving us no choice. She's even hired lawyers to suggest that I'm a criminal now. I went from a white supremacist to being a criminal now because as the CEO of America's Frontline Doctors, I am now fighting her because I truly believe that if we don't fight people like this, it would stain this movement. And just like you use BLM as an example, we can't stand like that. We can't be that group. We have to be different. And that's why I'm fighting so hard. People can say, Kevin, why don't you just walk away? I said, I can't. After 700 and some odd thousand miles as of last week going around this country talking about telling the truth, standing up against the tyranny of our time, talking about what Martin and Malcolm would do, talking about what Medgar Evers would do, talking about what the great leaders would do, Paul Robeson would do. They would never step back and say, we're not going to fight to save an organization. I think that has huge value. It really, really does. And the people that work there and the people that did work there and some of the former board members, guess what? I'm here to say that we're going to work to make sure we not only value what you've done, but we're going to bring the truth to America, and we're going to build an institution that believes in what? The human life, believes in children, believe in what we can do to make this country healthy again. And that's what I'm most proud of. It really disturbs me that I even have to have a show, do a show like this, or talk to people about this, but we have to be honorable. We cannot lose our moral authority. We cannot create excuses like, oh, this is a personal thing. No, this is about doing the right thing. And she, for the last several years, she has ripped this organization off. I mean, just on the J6 bills that she used America's Frontline Doctors money for is transparent. The $30 million that we have right now that we cannot find, we can't even finish our forensic audit because her people have not participated correctly by turning over the information. So she's been hiding, she's been stalling, she's been using the courts in a horrible way, and she's out there telling people, I'm being victimized. Well, we're not being victimized, we're just telling the truth. At the American Frontline Doctors, as it stands right now, our job is to tell the truth and build an institution that I think will bring value to human life in this country. That's what this is all about, truth. This is what this is all about, building a bridge to what America looks like in the 21st century.
Right. But Kevin, what concerns me is that as long as there are no criminal penalties sought, she's still the front-facing person for websites, social media, for America's Frontline Doctors. So to the average citizen, she still represents them. And at this point, without any court action, without any legal action, it's essentially a he said, she said.
Well,
right? And so it seems like America's being drawn into a personality war rather than righting the ship that needs to be righted.
Well, there's one thing that in criminalizing her was something that we didn't want to do. We actually thought that we would not have to go that far. After the court case in Arizona that disqualified her as a board member of the organization, we thought that would go away. But we understood, and we still understand, that she has no moral compass. And we are doing that. I just don't want to talk about what the next level of our, our legal action is. We have like 4 legal actions we're taking this week that are quite serious. And I knew I had to be very careful in laying that out for you. But there's no he say, she say here. Mm-hmm. It's about a woman that is engaged in fraud from the day we left the Arizona courts several months ago. She's been engaging in fraud. Now, I've been on a number of shows having this conversation, not as many as I should have done, but we just didn't want to criminalize somebody that we thought earlier on that could bring some more value to what we're fighting for. But we have a number of cases that are going to be going before the Arizona court and the Florida court. She's living in a house that's probably worth $4 million now. She's been squatting in this house for almost 2 years now, not paying any rent, saying that she owns the house, when in fact, at the court case in Arizona, she disqualified all that by saying she doesn't own the house and that she did use small donors' money to live in a house and buy a house for $4 million. It was $3 at the time. So, it's not about, once you get clarity on this, and this is why I'm doing the show with you and having this conversation, and be welcome to have her on the show, anybody on the show that wants to talk about this openly. One of the things we didn't want to do, we didn't want to be like everybody else. We thought that if we just would settle this and say, hey, listen, you're wrong, let's move on, it would go away. But now we realize we have no choice but to file criminal charges against her. We have no choice but to go to the court and now ask for the court to step in to take action. We now know that she's never going to do the honorable thing. I mean, for her to go around the country suggesting that she doesn't want me to be around her because it upsets her that I'm lying on her, that's hubris at a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's narcissism at a whole nother level. That is, Kafkaesque. For the lack of a better example. And I got to tell you, what we call it from the school I come from is maximum sophisticated confusion. But here's the thing. For all of the people in this movement that's still trying to rationalize what she's done or suggesting that it's a personal thing, that's lazy talk. That's why we're in the situation we're in America right now. That's why all those captured agencies have taken over our lives. That's why our government has its foot on our neck. That's why Big Pharma has now commoditized everybody in this country, because we just didn't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to push it to the side. Oh, it's up to them to take the action. It's up to them to do something about it. No, it's up to us to do something about it. And that's why I'm on this show. And it's not about just taking legal action against her. It's about coming out to the public and finally saying, we have someone that has lost their way. We have someone that's not telling you the truth. We have someone that has thwarted this organization from growing and evolving, so we can move this country and move people around this country that need organizations like us to help them better understand how do they become a better and a healthy America. Right now, in some schools in America, they're actually banning whole milk. Right now, in Black communities around the country right now, you have autism rate is 1 in 5, 1 in 8 in some parts of the country. Right now, we have people all around this country that are constantly being sick and listening to a corporation, Big Pharma, that is hell-bent on commoditizing their bodies to death. So for us, we didn't want to have to take that action to go and say, we're going to file criminal charges. We're going to say, listen, Let's appeal to some sort of decency and let's say, hey, you have the ability to move on. But now she didn't, and now we have to take that action. Now I have to come out in public to talk about this, diverting my attention from building a company, or I should say a nonprofit, that's going to move us into the future.
Yeah.
And that's the shameful part about this. That was a very good question. We really, really worked hard not to do that. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I actually worked with her several times until I found out what she had done. So I could have done what everybody else did and say, oh, I don't want to get involved in this. Oh, you know what? It's too messy. No, we have to, because we're no better than the Black Lives Matter. We know better than the FDA. We know better than Fauci. We're no better than Gates. We know better than all of them. We're no better than the World Health Organization. We have to stand up against the tyranny, not just on the outside, but in the inside. We have to stand up against the barbarians, not just on the inside, but on the outside, but on the inside. We can't talk about them losing their moral compass. We can't talk about them doing the horrible things they're doing to us, and we don't stand in the middle of the floor and say, you can't do that either.
Right. I would say, I would suggest that it's nice, it's perhaps noble to say we don't want to go after criminal charges. But I mean, I think criminals should be treated like criminals.
We are doing it now.
Okay. And I think that's critical to having America understand whether the ship's been righted, who's in charge of the ship, because as it stands now, even me going online, it's very hard to ascertain who's in charge and what's happening.
But that goes to show you how horrible this is. She knows that she has nothing to do with America Frontline Doctors. And I wanted America to know. That's why I'm doing these shows now, that she has nothing to do with America Frontline Doctors, that right now, today, at this moment, she's now still committing fraud by holding the assets of the organization hostage. That's criminal, and you're right. And we've decided to do that, and we're phasing ourselves into that space. But earlier on, that's the decision that we made, because we thought that, you know what, we don't want to beat up on somebody that might have been one of ours. You know, we wanted to take the high ground. But when you're dealing with, you know, pigs, you know, you got to deal with them the right way. No pun intended for my friends that love pigs.
So let me ask you. She obviously has control of the website. Okay, who owns the name?
Free Speech Foundation owns the name.
And
we are Free Speech Foundation. She's not.
Okay. So you own the name. And how about the bank accounts? Interestingly, a number of bank accounts in several different states.
Well, that's a very good question. When I first took over as CEO several months ago, we started a capture program. We started recapturing money from some of the banks. Now, some of the banks are suggesting, oh, we don't know who the rightful authority is. So that's where we're in court now again. So she's actually going to the banks, giving them false documentation, suggesting, you know, and they don't know. Banks, you know, they're trying to figure it all out. So we have legal counsel that's working on that, going to the banks and saying that she is the rightful authority over the bank accounts, knowing that she's not. I mean, this is really, when I say a Shakespearean tragedy, it really is. She is now going to the banks in this country, writing letters with her attorneys, saying that she is the rightful authority over the bank accounts. And then she's using someone that, Sheriff Mack, who was taken off the board because he stole $350,000 out of a bank account under the auspices that he was protecting the money. I just want people to understand. And then did this with a co-agent, went into a bank and took $350,000 out and put it in another account until we filed charges. And the investigative committee, investigation task force went to interview him. He told us where the money is. There's about 1.7 in Tennessee we're fighting to get. And then there's money in other parts of the country that she's utilizing. She's actually stealing every day from the organization so the organization can't move forward. This is horrible. If we saw this any place happening in the country, we would all be appalled. We would be outraged. And that's why I'm doing these shows now. I think people need to know the truth.
Right.
She sued me. I think she's suing me for $15 million. I find it hilarious. But I'm welcome that, because everybody has to have their time in court. And I think it's great that we're going to the courts and we're doing what we're doing now. You know, we've gone to the mattresses, as they would say. And, you know, and we didn't want to do that. Listen, one of the things I take pride in is being measured and being focused and being committed. I didn't want to spend our limited resources on just going to court every day. And, you know, she's out there sponsoring events using the money money that she's stealing from the organization so we can do the work that we need to do. She's out there giving money, our money, standing on the stage as if she's doing something honorable.
Yeah.
And the sad part about it is those organizations and NTCs that took the money, they're engaging in fraud too. I mean, that's a serious thing. Now, she's incorporated all of them into her activity. I've had people call me up and say, Kevin, well, can you not come to this thing because Simone Gold's going to be there and she's going to be upset if you show up.
Yeah.
After I explained to them, there's $30 million missing. So we're no better. We're no better than the people then we're fighting. And I did not travel this country and put the skin in the game that I've done to have that happen.
Yep.
I'm going to fight against that every single day.
Okay, so transparency, I think, is there. I've read through several reports. I think they're being made public. I think we're good there. Accountability, I'd say lagging behind, right? But I would hope, because for America, unless there's they're so accustomed, right, to politicians not being held accountable, to the bureaucracy not being held accountable, that there are two types of people, the people that get away with stuff and then the rest of us. And they are not going to want to have that in an organization that they hopefully can regain trust in the future. So hopefully the accountability is coming. Let's talk about focus. Let's talk about the future in our last 10 minutes in this program. Tell me where you see, assuming you gain full control of the organization, front-facing and so forth, where does the organization head?
Well, listen, I think we should be focused on education. We really need to educate our nation about what it means to be healthy. I think that we need to start working and developing relationships with on-the-ground doctors that are going to be going into these communities and not only educating, really developing a real strategic pathway to make America, healthy. We need to go into the urban and suburban and rural areas of this country and start to really understand that it is up to us to have our own body sovereignty by claiming our health. I think that there's new emerging technology that we're working with. I think companies like the Wellness Company, I think Cardio Miracle, all of these companies now are coming and we're working with them to really focus on how do we get better heart health? How do we get better nutrients? How do we get better education? How do we get focused on rebuilding the trust between the doctor and patient? How do we move out of sick care to well care? How do we develop strategic policies like Tara Thornton and them are fighting down in California, and people all around the country like Health Freedom Florida, they're fighting now, putting a civil rights bill that DeSantis kind of worked around, but we're still pushing it. It's so many good organizations out there that we're working with. Doctors like Christiane Northrup and Larry Pulaski out there talking about pediatric care and what it means to be a woman and women's health. That's what we could be doing. Think about the work that we could be doing. Think about the bridge that we can build, to a community of people that trust us now and understand that we're there and we have their back on the policy side, on the advocacy side, on the education side. That is what we want to do. And, and for me to have to be here to talk about the other stuff, it's very offensive. It's painful to sit here and have to have this conversation with you. But now I know that I have to do it. I tried to be very measured about this. I tried to be very focused, but I want to get to that work. That's the God's work. That's the real work. That's what is going to lead us out of this mess. It's not about what happened 3 years ago. It's about how do we move to the future, and I think that if we can continue to stay focused and get past this dark period, because all organizations, I've seen a lot of organizations go through this. I've seen a lot of corporations go through this. I think we're right there. And the team that I have is just incredible. And I think they could have walked away any day. So, the court strategy, I think, is going to lead to criminal charges. I think that, the corporation, the nonprofit itself is going to be asking a judge to step in. I mean, it's all of these defamation lawsuits. I take them with a grain of salt. I'm not really concerned about that. But we are really in the middle of really a dark period, but I see light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep. Trent Luce, who's a board member, correct?
Yes, Trent
and is well known by many of our viewers. I'm going to quote him. It says, "The role of America's frontline doctors must be to apply constant pressure to the greater medical community to have a truly science-based approach." Right. And so to that quote, I have two questions. Number one, it seems to me that America's Frontline Doctors and the parent organization have Frontline News and are kind of have their hands in many pots. Well, are you thinking of regaining focus to medical
Well,
only?
we don't, what the frontline news that you're seeing now is
Mm-hmm.
being run out of Israel.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with us. Everything you're seeing now is built on the sand of lies.
Okay.
We're talking about repurposing some of it, maybe. You know, for instance, you know, there was a lot of activity and advocacy work on the ground that I thought was being done well. But after I did more research, I understand Simone Gold thought that. I thought on the frontline health piece, you know, really doing a real strong telehealth company is something that we're going to be working on in the future. We're going back to that. We're just going to do it differently. We're going to be more on the ground.
Kevin, let me ask you, why why try and salvage the organization?
Well,
You've got the founder, right, who's allegedly fraudulent. You've got other significant contributors like Sheriff Mack, allegedly fraudulent. A huge fight. Why not just start over? Why not just start a new organization?
well, we're going to revamp the organization, but it's difficult to do that when you're in the legal space. So we have to close that up. And we do have a plan on the wellness side, and we do have a plan on the telemedicine side, and we do have a strategic plan on the local side from public policy and advocacy and education. We do have a plan. But when we get ready to move to that plan, we have to go back and deal with that. We have to snuff that out.
Sure.
To get to the future of what we want to be. And we already have a real top-notch plan for the future. But we know if we don't close this up, it's going to continue to harm what we're trying to do in the future. So we do have a plan, and we do have a plan to move on. And, you know, I can't go into it like completely, but to answer your question, we're there where you are. We're there, I think, where half of America wants us to be.
Gotcha. Telemedicine. It was a significant component during the COVID phase. I think even in your own documents, the organization's own documents, it's recognized that maybe it needed to be tightened up a little bit. Is telemedicine going to be a significant component
Without
for the
question.
organization?
Without question. But more hyper-local. More hyper-local. I realize that there's a whole country out here that doesn't understand the value of tele-wellness. Not telemedicine, but tele-wellness. And we're working on the institutional science to drive that thought as opposed to just telemedicine, right? What is tele-wellness? How do we get the country to get there? How do we get Black Americans, Latino Americans, people that live in the rural parts of the country, people that live in the poorest part? How do we get to them? That's the real thing. How do we get to them? And that's what we're working on.
Very interesting. Now, what's up next that people can be keeping their eyes open for, keeping their ears open?
In the next week, we're going to be launching what we look like in the future. But we had to wait until this week because what we're going to be doing in the courts. So after we submit all of that stuff, we're going to be launching something in the next couple of weeks that I think is going to be exciting. That goes right to what I'm saying, the spirit of what I'm saying to you.
I see. Last question with regard to the future. It seems as though, again, going back to Trent Luce's comment about science-based medicine, and it seems as though if we are trying to hold the medical establishment accountable to science, which is, you know, it's so interesting. Science isn't just a set of facts. Science is a method, right, of evaluating the legitimacy of certain claims, and it's questioning. It's always questioning. And so going forward, it seems to me that we can, and perhaps in some circumstances, have gone the other direction, away from the medical establishment political narrative to a point where we now are bringing in sort of things that also have no scientific merit. You know where I'm going with this, right? Yeah. So it comes down to this. You can have some legitimate concerns and address issues with the establishment, and you can go too far by bringing in a bunch of snake oil.
That's right.
Tell me, we only have a minute left. Tell me if your organization has looked at addressing that.
Well, yeah, that's why this whole education component is so critical, to touch base on all of that, like really figure out where we should be going. Like, what is the educational component around the science, around how do you get healthy, how do you build a better country around health? I mean, so we're figuring that out. Everybody doesn't have the real, you know, people say we have the answer, but we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to re-educate ourselves about addressing those issues so we can hit the mark the right way. But I think that's going to be something we're going to be dealing with for a long time, because I don't think people trust the science anymore. I don't think people trust the healthcare industry anymore. I don't think people are even trusting their doctors anymore.
No.
So it's a lot of work, and that's where we want to be. You know, Rick, that's the work. You know, that's where I want to be spending my time, not here talking about this. you know. And I think that America needs to know the truth. I think that the actions we have taken thus far has been appropriate. I think we've been measured. I think we've been focused. I think the legal actions that we're going to be taking in the future is going to send a clear message that we're not playing around, that we're serious about what we need to be doing for this country. But let me tell you what this is really all about. It's about our children.
I see. I agree with you. It is about the future of our children. I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You've been watching a special report on Beck News. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming.